Good morning. Start అవుతుంది. So good afternoon everyone. Our topic today for medicine is viral hemorrhagic fevers. I am Dr. Karthik, Assistant Professor, Department of Medicine, Gayatri Vidyabhushan Medical College. So what are learning objectives for today's class? Today's class, at the end of the class, you should be able to define what is a viral hemorrhagic fever, what are the causes of viral hemorrhagic fevers, describe the common features of viral hemorrhagic fevers related to their pathogenesis, clinical features, and management. And the important topic for you from examination point of view is dengue. So we'll cover the topic in detail. So we'll describe the etiopathogenesis, clinical features, and management of dengue fever. Coming to the definition of viral hemorrhagic fever, it is not actually a definition. What are viral hemorrhagic fevers is defined as an acute systemic febrile syndrome caused by over 30 viruses from 4 different virus families with microvascular instability, with capillary leak and impaired hemostasis as the pathogenic hallmarks. So all the viral hemorrhagic fevers are an acute systemic febrile illness. They're acute diseases, that is, they present within days, and they're systemic diseases, like they cause disease, they infect all, they cause multi-organ disease. Of course, they are fevers, they are febrile, and there are syndromes, like these are collection of symptoms. So these are caused by 4 different RNA virus families and microvascular instability, that is impaired endothelial dysfunction leading to capillary leak and problem in the if the patient has disseminated intravascular coagulation, it also leads to decreased platelet count. So suppose the patient has a previous dengue viral infection with another serotype. So this leads to what is called as antibody mediated immune enhancement. So a previous infection with a heterologous dengue virus serotype, what happens? The body tries to the antibodies engulf the virus and they are captured by the macrophage or monocyte infection. But these antibodies are not capable of destroying the virus. So more amount of viral particles are captured by the macrocyte monocytes, and they lead to a lot of release of lot of inflammatory molecules, inflammatory mediators, cytokines, and activation of the complement. So this leads to massive leakage of plasma into the extravascular space, producing pleural effusion, ascites, and other third space volume loss, leading to profound intravascular volume depletion and shock, leading to severe disease. So previous infection with an heterologous dengue serotype leads to antibody-mediated immune enhancement, leading to a severe disease. So this is the pathogenesis of dengue fever. So coming to the clinical features, the incubation period is usually 2 to 7 days. Dengue fever may be asymptomatic, and the symptomatology may range to severe illness. Usually the prodrome lasts for 2 days with malaise and headache. So there are 3 phases in dengue. First one is the febrile phase lasting for 4 to 5 days. Then the critical phase lasting for 36 to 48 hours. Then the convalescent phase lasting, the recovery phase lasting for 6 to 7 days. The febrile phase, the patient will have fever. It's a typical saddleback fever where the patient has fever for 3 days. Then there is no fever for again 2 to 3 days. Then there is again fever for again 3-4 days. This is called saddleback fever, and present with non-specific symptoms with any viral hemorrhagic fever: headache, myalgias, retroorbital pain, flushing, and rash. Rash usually seen on 3rd to 5th day of the fever, and there is relative bradycardia, the Faggot sign. If the following the febrile phase, the patient goes into critical phase where there is capillary leak. It may be mild or it may be severe. So it will lead to pleural effusion, ascites, and hypovolemia due to intravascular volume depletion and Due to thrombocytopenia, there may be hemorrhagic manifestations. And if the depletion of the volume is severe, patient may have shock. This may lead to dengue hemorrhagic fever or dengue shock syndrome. If the critical phase has been treated properly, then the patient goes into convalescent phase where there is clinical improvement is seen. So, and the ECF returns to the circulatory volumes. So usually the critical phase starts after the fever subsides. So when the febrile phase is over, we must be careful that patient is entering into a critical phase and we should manage adequately with fluids. Okay. So rash which occurs, usually the occurrence of rash is on 3rd and 5th day of the fever. It's usually a maculopapular, scarlet or morbilliform rash, usually seen on the trunk, spreading centrifugally and sparing the palms and soles. So here are the pictures. The third picture you can see is a diffuse macular rash with islands of normal skin. This is usually typically seen in dengue. It's a diffuse macular rash, and this is also diffuse macular rash on the chest, and this is on the trunk. So it's often seen after the fever subsides at the defervescence of the fever. So next is the clinical test which you do to determine whether the patient has capillary fragility or the patient has microvascular instability or not is tourniquet test. So it is bedside test which is available. So it is performed by inflating the blood pressure cuff on the upper arm to midway between the systolic and diastolic. Inflate the cuff between the systolic and diastolic blood pressure and keep it for 5 minutes. And then remove the cuff and look at the skin under the cuff to identify the petechiae. If there are more than 20 petechiae per inch, then it is called a positive tourniquet test. This positive tourniquet test indicates capillary fragility and thrombocytopenia. So if you do it regularly in a patient suspected to have dengue fever or in a patient with dengue fever, you will know when the patient is going into the critical phase, and you can properly manage the patient with IV fluids to mitigate the critical phase and come out of it into the recovery phase. So it is an important bedside test to determine whether the patient has capillary fragility and thrombocytopenia. As you can see in the picture, there are petechiae. They are to be measured in 1 inch square. If they're more than 20, then tourniquet test is positive. So there are certain warning signs which indicate the patient is going into a severe disease. The warning signs and symptoms include if there are recurrent vomitings, abdominal pain, decreased urine output which indicates reduced perfusion, hepatomegaly of more than 2 centimeters, hematocrit rise of more than 20%, or third space, fluid accumulation like pleural effusion and ascites, or rapid fall of platelets indicate patient is progressing into a severe disease. So certain high risk groups are more prone for severe disease like infants, old age people, pregnant patients, pregnancy, diabetes, hypertension, coronary artery disease, patient on immunosuppressed drugs or patients on steroid. They are more prone to have dengue hemorrhagic fever or dengue shock syndrome. So we have to watch out for these warning signs and symptoms when we observe the patient daily. If the patient complains of any warning symptoms, we have to take utmost care and see that patient doesn't progress into hemorrhagic phase or doesn't progress to shock. What are the criteria for the diagnosis of dengue hemorrhagic fever? So these are the criteria laid by given in the national guidelines. So this is the same: acute febrile illness of 2 to 7 duration with 2 or more manifestations like headache, retortive pain, myalgia, arthalgia, rash, and hemorrhagic are required to diagnose dengue hemorrhagic fever. If this is associated with hemorrhage and thrombocytopenia of less than 1 lakh and evidence of plasma leak, it is called dengue hemorrhagic fever. If these symptoms are combined, dengue hemorrhagic fever symptoms are associated with shock, hypotension, weak and narrow pulse or hypotension for age, cold and clammy extremities. This is called dengue shock syndrome. So how do you diagnose dengue? We have specific tests. We have ELISA. In the first 3 days, we'll do NS1 antigen test. NS1 is a non-structural protein of the virus. So the specificity is 98 to 100%. We do not do an IgM test within first 5 days because antibodies are not yet formed in the body. So antibodies will be found only after the 5th day. So we'll perform an IgM ELISA only after the 5th day. The IgA may persist up to 3 months in the body. So initially there is leukopenia, as we have already seen in the laboratory parameters of all the viral hemorrhagic fevers. There will be leukopenia initially, there will be thrombocytopenia, there will be hemoconcentration, increased hematocrit due to capillary leak. And hematocrit of more than 20% leak is definite evidence of plasma leakage, and it's a warning sign. And in severe disease, the enzymes of liver may be elevated more than 1000. So renal parameters may be altered if there is hypotension and shock. And the blood gas analysis may reveal lactic acidosis or metabolic acidosis. There may be abnormal coagulation profile if the patient goes into disseminated intravascular coagulation. So in an endemic country like India, you have to do all the other tests which may lead to acute febrile syndrome like malaria, filaria, leptospirosis, scrub typhus, because they present with common clinical picture of fever and thrombocytopenia. So this is an overview of illness of dengue. Initially, we have the febrile phase where there is viremia, increasing the virus in the body, and there is dehydration, and there are fever temperature, the spikes of fever spikes. After the febrile phase is over, the patient enters the critical phase where it may cause shock and bleeding, hemorrhagic manifestation due to thrombocytopenia and intravascular volume depletion. If the hematocrit rises because of hemoconcentration and the platelet comes down, then there is again elevation of the platelet, and the serology, the IgM starts to elevate only after the febrile phase is over, that is mostly after the 5th day. So after in the recovery phase, there is fluid reabsorption. We must not overload the patient with fluids in the recovery phase because it will again cause accumulation of fluid in the third phase. So this is a summary of all the 3 phases. How do you treat dengue? Symptomatic and bed rest. Mild cases can be treated at home. Moderate severe cases have to be hospitalized. For fever, you have to use tepid sponging and paracetamol. You have to avoid NSAIDs because they cause a risk of bleed. Hydration. Oral route is preferred when the patient can take oral fluids. IV fluids are given if the patient has tachycardia or impaired organ perfusion. We must watch out for the warning symptoms and signs, and they are, as I've already said, no antivirals effective against dengue. So how do you give the fluids? There's an algorithm for giving the fluids. We have to assess the fluid status of the patient. If the patient has tachycardia, impaired perfusion of the organ, decreased capillary refill time, or cold extremities, then we have to give fluids from a range of 5 to 7 millimeter per kg per hour, or up to 10 and 20 milliliter per kg per hour. Then you gradually assess the patient for every 2 hours for recovery from the hypotension in the form of decreased tachycardia, improving blood pressure, warm and pink extremities, and capillary refill time of less than 2 seconds. Then you can reduce the fluid. As soon as the patient is able to take oral, you have to switch on to oral therapy if the patient is clinically stable. So this process has to go all along the treatment. The patient should be periodically reassessed for the status of hydration. Hematocrit is periodically done. That's how you monitor whether there is hemoconcentration or the hematocrit is getting down. Then we'll assess, are we giving the adequate amount of fluids or not. So careful fluid replacement is required. Crystalloids are the fluids of choice. Isotonic fluids like normal saline, Ringer lactate, Hartmann solution. Patient goes into has severe hemorrhage or shock. ICU care is required. The aggressive fluid replacement, sometimes inotrope support, oxygenation. There is no role of any steroids in dengue fever management. So any metabolic acidosis must be corrected. Electrolyte imbalance must be corrected. And management of bleeding. When do you transfuse platelets in a patient with dengue? If the platelets are less than 10,000, we'll give platelet transfusion. Each unit of platelet may raise the platelet up to 2,000. And if there is clinical bleeding, this is prophylactic platelet transfusion. If there is clinical bleeding, irrespective of the platelet count, we have to give platelet transfusion. Platelets can be random donor platelets, or where random donor platelets, the platelets are pooled from different donors, or single donor platelet. In case of severe bleeding and coagulopathy, packed red blood cell transfusion and FFP transfusion can be done. So another important thing is prevention of breeding of the mosquitoes. So we have to take measures to prevent artificial stagnation of water, and we have to abolish the breeding sites by spraying insecticides. Okay, this is about the dengue fever, we have seen what is the epidemiology, what is the microbiology of dengue fever, what are the clinical features, what are the investigations you do to confirm the diagnosis of dengue fever, what are the criteria to diagnose dengue fever, how do you classify dengue like dengue fever, dengue hemorrhagic fever, dengue shock syndrome, and expanded dengue syndrome. Then how do you treat? Treatment is mostly symptomatic, and fluid management is the important thing. Transfusion of blood and blood products whenever required in severe hemorrhage, or prophylactically when platelets are less than 10,000. To summarize, today what we have discussed about viral hemorrhagic fevers, the definition being acute systemic febrile illness. All viral hemorrhagic fevers are acute systemic. They cause systemic disease, involve many organs. Febrile syndrome. They are mostly due to four virus. They are caused by four RNA virus families: Arenaviridae, Bunniaviridae, Filoviridae, and Flaviviridae. The main pathogenic hallmarks are microvascular instability and impaired hemostasis. So the clinical presentation initially non-specific: fever, headache, myalgias, retroorbital pain, and rash. And if they pass into the critical phase, they produce hemorrhage shock and complicate with DIC and MODS. Treatment is always supportive. The treatment is supportive treatment with antipyretics, IV fluids, in critical cases with blood and blood products, and ICU treatment with fluids, vasopressors in MODS. So this summarizes the presentation of viral hemorrhagic fever. So hope you have learned what are viral hemorrhagic fever and what are the different pathogenesis, and how do you manage, what are the clinical features, and how do you manage the fever.
వాళ్ళు చెప్తారు సార్ టెక్నికల్గా ఇష్యూస్ చెప్తారు అంటే ప్రజెంట్లీ ఇంటర్నెట్ కూడా డౌన్ ఉన్న వల్ల.
What is convalescent plasma? So it's a So convalescent plasma is the plasma derived from a patient who has recovered from the illness. So it is used to treat the patient who has been infected. So the plasma which will contain the antibodies against the virus will be used to treat disease in the infected person. That is convalescent plasma. It is rarely tried in certain diseases, especially in Lassa, in diseases caused by Arenaviridae family, not in dengue. Thank you, sir. And already HLA, HP sensitized patient, how to infuse platelets. Actually, HLA, HP sensitized patients. See, we could discuss in some other time because I am not ready with the answer yet. So already HLA has seen how to. How many days of recovery we take plasma? There may be certain guidelines, because as of now I don't know how many days of recovery you take the plasma. So it is supposed to be a method of treatment. I do not exactly know how do you take the plasma, or the exact criteria of how many days of recovery to be taken to consider for the plasma. You are more interested in the convalescent plasma rather than all the topic. That's interesting. Okay, any other questions?